the start of our Fiction Friday. And I really appreciate you being here, everybody. And remember, if you want to help out the show, just head on over Inside Rumble. You can subscribe. You can do any of those things. Go to my Substack and do that as well. You can follow me on X at Gart Goldsmith. And in a moment, we're going to tell you about a guy I hope you will follow at his business. Let's talk Fiction Friday, everybody. Talk about one of my good heroes, and we'll start things off with one of those places I got to visit, not in the black and white days, not when the control voice was scaring little kids on television with that high-pitched whine, saying that we will control the horizontal, but I did get to work for them later when they came back, and it was fun. And it was the fulfillment of a dream of mine that I remember I used to write to Rod Serling's widow about that, and she would encourage me. And it was great. I finally got to write to her and said, I made it. I'm working at the Outer Limits. And that was great.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
You got that right, my friends. The Outer Limits. And by the way, that guy was also the voice of the bad guy on Johnny Quest, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. He did a lot of voiceover work back then for Hanna-Barbera and a lot of others. I want to show you a little something awesome, everybody. This is the website Fantastic Fiction, and they've got a fantastic guy right there. Don't want to oversell this man. Tom Monteleone, multiple Bram Stoker winner, 4-time Bram Stoker winner, and the bio for him is pretty substantially awesome. You see here, Tom Monteleone is an American science fiction author and horror fiction author. His first novel, Seeds of Change, was the lead-off title in the critically unsuccessful Laser Books line of science fiction titles, but he went on to become a popular writer of supernatural thrillers. He is no relation to Chicago outfit mobster Tom Monteleone. Monteleone has been a professional writer since 1972 and a 4-time winner of the Bram Stoker Award. He has published more than 100 short stories in numerous magazines and anthologies, and of course, numerous collected works. He has published more than 100 short stories in numerous magazines and anthologies. His stories have been nominated for many awards and have appeared in lots of Best of the Year compilations. His notorious column of opinion and entertainment, the Mothers and Fathers Italian Association, currently appears in Cemetery Dance. Of course, it stopped once he exposed the Horror Writers Association for being so woke. And he is the editor of 7 anthologies, more than that, including the highly acclaimed Borderlands series. Yes, indeed. He's written for the stage and television, having scripts produced for American Playhouse, which won him the Bronze Award at the International Television and Film Festival of New York, and the Gabriel Award. George Romero's Tales from the Dark Side, remember that, and a series on Fox TV entitled Night Visions. He's written many feature-length screenplays, none of which have been produced. But as he says, help pay for the house. I always love that. So check him out. Look at all this stuff. This is out of control. Submerged, one of the most recent ones. Awesome stuff. Let's check and see if Tom is with us. Tom, we'll see if we can bring you in, man. See if you're there. Check out your audio. You let me know if you can hear me, and I'll let you know if I can hear you. And if not, we can try again later. Give it a shot, Tom. See if it's working. And we'll just say hello to him real briefly.
Gardner, my equipment's going bug fuck on me. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Can we do this by phone? I have, I've got mics, I've got speakers, I've got a Focusrite audio processor. None of it's working.
Well, you know what's interesting, Tom? You
Yeah.
actually are coming through fine with the phone, and there's no delay. So let me just pull your mic down and make sure we're not getting any echo or anything like that. And we can do it this way. Does that sound all right?
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. I can't hear you when you're, I can't even get my nothing to come through my speakers, the computer speakers, nothing from the headphones.
Well, what you were doing before with the phone right up against you is fine. And that way, if you don't put me on speakerphone, you won't get any echo. And if you want to just hold the phone up for 10 or 15 minutes.
I can do.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Well, Tom, I want to ask you a little bit about this article, and I'm going to call this up. Yeah, the lion, Tom Monteleone, the mountain lion they couldn't put down. And I think this is pretty interesting because people who are familiar with the show know that you've been on the show before, and they know some of the things. Yeah, they know some of the things that you went through and your experience in exposing the Horror Writers Association for their wokeness and what you had seen sort of rising up over time as the Horror Writers Association started to basically go woke. And instead of going for merit, somehow an award for merit for writing now had to be attached to skin color and nationality and gender and all these things. So give people...
Yeah, they really started meaning that way. And what I noticed it creeping in even before they started nominating people that I didn't think were worthy of a Lifetime Achievement Award. Not because they were bad people or they had no talent, but they hadn't fit the criteria of making a significant contribution, to the genre, through their career. But I noticed early on that every once in a while we get a new newsletter from HWA. Are you still in it, by the way? Do you still belong?
No, I haven't. Yeah. I lost contact with them years ago, even before.
The newsletter would come out and they say, this is Pride Month, and HWA, supports Pride Month. HWA, is a climate change. HWA supports Black Lives Matter. HWA is transgender rights or human rights. All the lefty litany of things that they're proclaiming that our organization is backing or is in favor of. They haven't polled the membership on this, and I'm pretty sure that our membership was just like any part of the other part of the country. It's like 50-50, right?
Yeah, right.
So they're making these statements in support of clearly leftist programs and agenda that maybe a lot of us didn't really agree with, Yeah. So I saw that happening. And then I thought, man, I got to keep my mouth shut. But, after a while, I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been writing a column of opinion for 40 years that I never kept my mouth shut. So why am I doing it now?
Exactly.
And I got and I stepped in a big dog pie.
Well, and it was amazing to me because as you and I and Paul and a few others at a particular convention we would attend all the time, we were definitely the outliers, but
God, yes.
Yeah, we were among a lot of Northeastern hardcore lefties, and there was a subgroup in that basically sort of latched on to a couple people who were starting to see success, and they became very sycophantic to these people. And you could see the way that they wore their hearts on their sleeves, constantly putting things out there where, believe the victim and all these things. And as I mentioned to you, shortly after they were pushing the believe the victim thing, Rand Paul got attacked by his neighbor. And the very same people who had been saying, believe the victim, always stand for the victim, were saying inside Facebook, it couldn't have happened to a better guy. And they thought they celebrated the fact that he got the shit beat out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and then some of these people were going down to Boston to protest what was actually a free speech rally being put on by an Indian guy, and they claimed that it was a racist thing. They didn't even know anything about it. They thought it was so it was amazing to me because it was a combination of their hubris, their hardcore leftist cultural Marxist idea of any small group has to be promoted because we can use them as leverage against what we see as the establishment, whether it's the establishment in literature, which is actually them with the giant New York publishing houses, which wouldn't hear anybody who was conservative or libertarian at all. It's always got to be the same promotion. It's like an extension of the Oprah Winfrey Book Club, where everybody's a victim. And if you get your turn, you can go through the turnstile of victimization and also be promoted and now get your book seen. And that was all it seemed to be.
That is a brilliant insight. And that is exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
I have my agent canceled me. So I found a new agent who was, more even tempered.
Yeah.
And he said, my God, I have a hard time. If you're a white writer, a male writer these days, I have a hard time selling your books because, if you look on the bestseller list or any of the genre lists, 80% of the stuff is being written by women.
Absolutely.
They don't want, and sometimes they will hide their sex by using just their initials,
Yeah.
But they're still women.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's still women writers, and my agent said, "My God, it's really getting hard. If you're a talented white guy, you're in deep shit."
Yeah, and like I said, I worked at Annie's Bookstop for a long time, and my boss.
Oh yeah.
Imagine this, Tom. My boss told me early on, a woman. She said, "Look, 90% of the stuff we sell," and we've had conversations with Heather Graham about this. She's aware of this. Heather, obviously, and Paul and you and I have sat down at tables and talked about how, the genres have certain people who like certain genres. So when I worked at Annie's Bookstop, the owner said, 90% of what we sell here is romance, and women are the readers of romance. They can tell if a guy has written a romance novel because the guys don't pay attention to certain things and the women pay attention to other things. It's just the way that most guys think, the way that most women think. So it's just the way that it is. And women want a certain thing. So there was a pattern. There was the tiger guy who can't be tamed except by this one woman, and it's always the same pattern. I mean, it's the way it is, right? Yeah,
it was a formula that was very comfortable for the reader.
Yeah,
and it made sense. I understood the readership. I didn't understand the editorialship.
Well,
what was steering this bullshit.
One of the first things that I saw was, and this goes towards that populating the bookstore shelves with a certain amount of shelf space. That means we're going to populate it with what is attractive to the customers, right? And this has grown and grown and grown as the publishing houses saw this with women. And as women, typically, I would see a lot of women buying these books who had real chips on their shoulders about men. They didn't like men. And I would hear conversations about men, and they would say things that I would never hear my male friends say about women, ever.
No, of course not.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was stunning. And
that was part of the, I don't want to cut you off.
No.
But you were talking about, all the friends we would have at these conventions that were clearly, leftists or at least what they call progressives. And you know what? I didn't care what their political stance was. They'd send me stories from my anthology series, which I've published like 7 volumes of Borderlands, which is it's been around for a long time.
Right.
Won a lot of awards.
Yeah.
And I didn't care what their political stripe was. If they wrote me a good story, I bought it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
It was never a problem for me.
And
as a matter of fact, one of the guys I used to always see at the Nikon conventions that we used to go to, I forget, he was a lawyer, and he was a big guy, kind of a burly character. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I used to always say, "Hi, comrade, how are you?" I used to call him comrade.
Yeah. And that was Bracken.
Bracken, exactly. It was Bracken.
Yep.
Yeah, and I never said it in any deprecating way. I said it, as a kind of a acknowledgement that we were on different sides of the aisle.
Exactly. But, you look at, and you mentioned
I didn't give a shit.
No. And you mentioned last time we spoke, Rick Hautala, up in Maine, passed away a number of years ago. A real lefty guy.
He was a really good friend of mine.
Great guy. Everybody got along.
I was friends with Rick for 30 years.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you know, we were diametrically opposed on almost everything.
And
But I liked him like a brother. He was a good guy.
Well, this is one of the lessons that I think comes to teach people.
But they can't do the same thing for us.
That's exactly it. You know, when I talk to students, Tom, I'll discuss how we talk about the tragedy of the commons, and even so, we can say how nice it is to be able to get along with people who have different opinions about politics. The difference between a person who's in favor of liberty and a leftist who are collectivist on the right side, whatever it might be, is that we are willing to leave them alone, to say, you know what, I'm not going to use the state to make you do what I want, but they're not willing to leave us alone. That's the difference.
No, I mean, you know what's a beautiful example of that? Charlie Kirk got assassinated, right?
Right.
And wow, the streets were full of conservatives, burning down buildings after that, right?
Yeah.
Oh wait,
right.
Oh no, they didn't.
No, they didn't. Exactly.
Because we're fucking civilized,
and Well, the other thing I was going to mention, Tom, is when we get to this manifestation of this wokeism, and we've got a new David, and we're going to promote that new David in a cultural Marxist sort of way. And, I mean, it goes back to Gramsci and all that sort of stuff. We're going to do that. What I think is really interesting is the first blush that I saw of this was you were editing an anthology, and on Facebook many years ago, probably 10 years ago, you wrote, my wife strips the names off of these things. I just want a good story. And then people came back and said, no, you need to populate it with underrepresented this and and you said, look, if I were a basketball coach, I would want the best players, which would probably be black guys because they're just generally better. And then people got upset at you for that. It was like, dude, it just...
I wasn't even supposed to mention the fact that the NBA is 85% black.
It's just...
because I mentioned it, that's a racist observation.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's just, it's amazing to see. And then, so people attacked you about that. Now you get an email. So it ended up happening that you had sent off, because you're a recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award for the Bram Stoker Awards from the Horror Writers.
Yeah, and they gave me it back in 2017 or whatever it was. And you know what? I hate to say this, Gardner, but I fucking deserved it. Jesus Christ. I'd won the award, the Stoker Award, 5 or 6 times.
Yep.
I ran a boot camp for writers for 20 years.
Yep.
I published an award-winning anthology series. I did a lot for the genre.
Exactly. And
it's not like, they gave it to me because I was a, whiny little white guy.
No. You didn't wear your Italian on your sleeve. If it had been 100 years ago, maybe you could have been in the favored minority group, right? I mean, for God's sake, right?
Yeah. Luigi,
I know. It's just...
what did you do for me?
It's just so lame. It's so bad because the award... The award is supposed to be about merit, not about skin color or gender.
Correct.
I mean, why have the award then? It's so dumb.
I called them out for it, and they really went after me.
Yeah.
I said, despite your leanings into DEI, I'm compelled to nominate a smart old white guy.
And
it was Stuart Schiff.
Stuart Schiff, publisher.
A lot of people don't even know who he is.
Exactly. He put out Whispers for a long time, and Stuart Schiff.
When before, this is pre-Stephen King. This is back in the horror Paleolithic, and he was like. The whole genre was on life support. Nobody was reading horror fiction.
Yeah.
And Stu Schiff was out there with his walker and his crutches, and he's limping along, publishing people like Joseph Payne Brennan and Manly Wade Wellman.
Right.
And it was incredible. He kept the genre going on his own.
And so,
and thank God, he made a decent living as a dentist, and he was able to pay for he paid for this whole genre out of his pocket.
Absolutely.
For like 10 years. And then King comes along, and gives everything an enema, right? The whole genre, right? And then everything exploded, right?
It was great. And we saw little flashes of this with television where, Kolchak came on, Richard Matheson's stuff was popular. We saw little bits of it with Duel and, things like that, I Am Legend. And it had always been sort of, within the pulps and everything. But for massive mainline popular fiction, Stephen King broke the doors open. All these other writers who had been featured for a little bit here and there, maybe in Omni for their science fiction, or in some of these smaller like Whispers, like, what he did, they're now given the opportunity, and it's terrific. And what you did in nominating him acknowledged the fact that he was the life preserver for these people for so many years.
Exactly.
It was great.
They get, and unfortunately, because they attacked me, right, for saying that he was a victim of the DEI syndrome, poor Stewart probably is never going to get the recognition he deserves. Right. And I blame myself for it, because I shined him in my poison spotlight, so to speak.
But the thing about that, Tom, is, looking back on it, you can say, oh, maybe if I had made a different decision, the second guessing sort of thing, if I had just put his name in there, then a number of other thoughts come to mind, which is, well, would they have actually looked at him and dismissed him, and then later would I have had to done it all again and then express what I expressed the first time? Like, if you know what I mean?
They might have dismissed him because, oh, no, he's just another smart old white guy.
That's exactly the problem, right? So let's say you had...
Whether I called him out for it or not, he was still going to be, under their DEI thumb.
That's the problem that I thought of. And then the other thing is...
you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about it like that. But that's probably exactly...
And that's just the tactics.
How the mechanism would grind.
Right. That's just the chess moves of it, right? The other thing about it is the principle of it which is, you know what? You should be able to call these people out on that, because it's very clear. And like, I noticed it. You noticed it. For years, they were doing that stuff in the Horror Writers Association. And they were patting themselves on the back for, we had our first nominee from such and such a country from this underrepresented group. It's like, well,
oh yeah, and then making a big deal out of it.
I know.
The last Stoker con that Paul and I went to was in Denver, 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years back. Yeah. And half the programming was couched in identarian languages, about the misrepresentation of this group or that group. It was really sad. Yeah. And they debuted this editor. The new editor of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. And she was this larger African-American woman that nobody had ever heard of.
Right. And that's where you ran into some of your troubles, because you responded to that.
Bob Gleason hired her, and she promptly put the magazine in the shitter.
Right.
I mean, I think the magazine is dead now.
Yeah. What magazine was it?
The magazine of fantasy and science fiction.
Oh, yeah. She
was like the flagship of fantasy and horror and science fiction for 40 years.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much dead. That they haven't published anything.
Well, it doesn't meet its distribution schedule. So right. the magazine distributors and the newsstands, they said, "Well, you're dead. You're not going to meet our monthly label." Because if you people don't realize it, but if you have a magazine that's being distributed on a newsstand, which is again, ancient history now, if you don't make that date on the magazine cover, they pull it. You're not going to be on the newsstands. Right. If you have an October pub date and you don't get it to them till December, well, you don't even get it distributed.
Right.
It's like, forget about it.
Right. Exactly.
And people don't even know this shit anymore.
Right.
This is like, you know what, Gardner? Let's pull up to our tall stools with our green eye shades and our black armbands and hand me a quill pen here.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too, Tom, because as you know, people who have read your stuff know the type of sarcasm you use and the sharp writing that you employ, especially in your nonfiction for Cemetery Dance. You've done that for years.
I mean, and some of it is, is tongue in cheek. It's like, come on, stop taking yourself so seriously.
Right.
Like, I don't even want people to call me an author. I'm a writer. You know what? Because writers, you know what writers do? They write. You know what authors do? They fucking auth. And who needs that, right?
Well, let's talk a little bit. And in fact, I've been able to. It took a while to load, but I've got the article there, which is a terrific thing. As you know,
they really did a beautiful job. I was on a radio show in Denver, of all places. And, yeah.
And I didn't know that Monteleone was mountain lion, which I think is really, really cool. And they go through a lot of.
It's obvious. Monte is mountain, Leone is lion.
Now right? I know. Yeah, this is great. and they mentioned, that you were writing the column for 30 years for Cemetery Dance. And so what ended up happening was you were in a podcast, in an interview, and after you had posted your email to the Horror Writers Association with your nomination for Stu in there. And how you said, you sarcastically like, well, I know you've been going woke for a while, everybody, so I'm going to nominate an old dead white guy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then they responded negatively to that. Then you posted the email on Facebook.
Actually, Stu is not dead yet.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So an old white guy. And so very clearly it exploded and people got upset. So then you were interviewed and you'd been having some scotch or something like that. And you were on there and you described.
I had too many bourbons, I think.
Yeah. So you described the woman that you were talking about as one of the award winners, a particular woman. You described her in not necessarily the most positive and slightly off color way. And that also exploded.
No different than they had described Lizzo at the Grammy Awards. But
good point.
The problem was that she didn't win an award. Basically, we were at the Denver convention, and she won Volunteer of the Year award. One of the Gimme Awards that they give out.
Yeah.
And she went up to accept this Volunteer of Award year thing. And instead of just saying, well, thank you guys, I really appreciate it. I really like working with HWA, whatever. She used that platform to promote her blog, which is called Stoker So White.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I thought, I'm sitting there in the audience and I'm thinking, you write a column called Stoker So White and you get away with that? Right? Why? Do we even need to discuss the dynamics of the cultural dynamics of this?
Yeah.
She's allowed to do this kind of shit when we can't, there's no way we could do it.
Right. Exactly. And I was thinking, imagine if I worked at that bookstore, right? And I came up with the reality that it was all men's fiction. And and I'm like, look, we cater to men. This is what it is. It would have exploded, right? It would have exploded.
You'd be tarred and feathered.
Right. And so this is what you're saying. You're saying, look, if this, and I understand that on certain degrees, people might say, well, you got to understand that, education wise, there's this cadre of Americana that was ill-served by the public tax-funded education system. Yeah, I guess we can see that.
Yeah,
so therefore,
absolutely.
It might not produce the same number of Stoker nominees if you're looking at, Hispanic or something from the inner city, whatever it might be, right? Okay, understood. I understand that. But you don't make it any better by focusing on the fact that you're going to promote people who have not achieved the merit. There's just, you can't have those basketball players on your team if they can't shoot, if they can't dribble. I'm sorry.
Exactly. And when people send stories into me, it's even if I do see their name on the manuscript, it's not, I have no idea what their ethnicity or their skin color or their age or their what plumbing they got between their legs. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. No. I just want to read a good story, and if it's good, I'm okay with that.
Exactly.
But I mean, now look, I belong to this charity group called the Society of Italian American Businessmen,
Right.
and it's a lot of guys. We do a lot of charity work. We have like 7 or 8 events a year where we raise a lot of money, and they're mostly Italian guys, and they're mostly conservative businessmen, and they all tell me that if they get a resume, or an application or an email, from somebody named Quantarius Jones, their radar goes up. Now, because they're thinking, who is this guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't agree with it. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying it's out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
So if I get a short story with somebody's odd, weird, contemporary first name, some made up name, my radar is going up. I'm thinking, okay, who are you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, that didn't come out of the ether. They created that situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be excoriated for recognizing it.
And on the other side of it, Tom, you've got the fear that some people might have, which is that I don't want to know anybody's names, because if I were to know their names and then deny them or know their ethnicity,
I'm a racist. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get nailed.
Yeah.
And then, it's gotten so bad that, with the federally funded universities now, which they're not supposed to get any federal money, obviously, we had them being called up in front of Congress for not handling anti-Semitism, which is the redefined anti-Semitism now. So if you're critical of the apparatus of a state called Israel, somehow that's attacking an ethnicity. Somehow critical of the polis means critical of a human being, which is just ridiculously stupid.
It is ridiculous.
I mean, it's totally anti-philosophical. It's totally illogical. And I mean, anybody like a first year law student could sit there and say, I don't think I want to go to, it's just stupid. So you wrote this and then you posted on Facebook. And what's interesting is you responded on the talk show and you described that woman, as you say, the way that they described Lizzo. And that was it. People,
the guy shows up on Lizzo and introduces her a smoking fat black chick.
Right.
That's we're going to give this award to a smoking fat black chick.
Right.
That's what he said.
Right. And
that was fine.
But you were on the other end of the DEI, which is, up on the screen there now.
Exactly.
So tell me what happened and tell some of the audience what happened, because it's been about, maybe 10 months or a year since you've been able to explain this to people. And I think it's a great.
I originally sent the letter into the HWA nominating Stewart and snidely saying that he was an old smart white guy. And it didn't show. They didn't put it up on the website. They didn't put it up on the newsletter. The editor, he gatekeeped it. He said, "No, this is not appropriate." Right. So I said, "Well, fuck it. I'll put it on my own Facebook page," which I did.
Right.
And the letters, the response was like a tsunami of people either for my position or against it, which is expected.
Yeah.
And I went back and forth. I got into pissing matches with some of the people.
Yeah.
And, and I said things on my own Facebook page. I'm sorry that men can't get pregnant. The only people that get pregnant are women, right, and women who call themselves men. Okay.
Right.
Men don't get pregnant.
Right.
And you can take your they them pronouns, stick them up your butt.
Right.
You're a single person. Don't bully me into your delusion that I got to just refer to you as a plurality.
Right.
Because you're not.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I went after that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And they piled on. I got called a racist, a transphobe, the usual crap. But the funny thing was, this was all on my own Facebook page.
Right.
And it had nothing. I never used any HWA venue. I didn't use their website. I didn't use their newsletter. I didn't even use their email.
Right.
It was all mine.
Right.
But yet the HWA accused me of violating their, anti-harassment codes. and using their venues for my racist diatribes. And that's why they dumped me. They expelled me from the organization that I helped found, by the way.
May I, Tom, may I read a little bit from this very, very good article from Kim?
That was amazing. I was on this radio show in Denver. They put out an amazing piece on me.
Yeah, and this is Kimmonson.com, KIMMONSON, Kimmonson.com.
Yeah, Kim Monson.
Kimmonson.com. Okay, got it. So they say here, or Kim Monson says, the retaliation was swift, coordinated, and devastating. Within a week, one of Borderland Press's distributors called. He had maintained a standing order of 175 copies for every title the press published. Quote, "We're canceling our standing order," he said. "We don't want your books anymore," end quote. Then the ebook publisher. This company had published over 100 titles from Borderlands Press, including 35 of Monteleone's own books. Dozens of writers and editors received monthly royalties through this arrangement. "We're canceling you," the publisher said. "We don't like what you said. You're a racist. You're a transphobe." Then the literary agent. He stopped returning calls. He stopped sending royalty checks. Then Cemetery Dance. They hung on for a little bit, and then the magazine, where you had written for decades, they canceled. Then the Daily Beast, an article labeling you as a racist and transphobe. Then hackers defacing your Wikipedia page. Then friends who simply stopped talking to you. So you lost 175 copies standing order canceled by your distributor. The 100 plus ebook titles were pulled by the publisher. 35 personal titles were delisted. The literary agent stopped returning calls. You had to get a new one. Royalties were withheld. Cemetery Dance column, one of the best. The reason I used to buy the magazine, gone. Yeah, that's why I read it. And I didn't even know you then. I was just getting it. I was like, this is awesome, man. I'd get it in out-of-town tickets down in Boston. Wikipedia page defaced by hackers. Half of Borderlands Press customer base gone. Daily Beast labels you racist. Friends stopped talking to you. It was pretty incredible, Monteleone said, just because I had an opinion different from the woke Stapo. That's the best. So then...
like that?
Yeah, and then you said, "I'm not a whiner, Kim. I don't come on and say, oh, poor me. I just push on. It's going to take a lot to put me down. You hear me?" So one of the big deals that they have here, Jason McBride sitting in Kim's studio, put his finger on what changed. Back then, being outspoken and a little bit edgy and not afraid to say what you thought was actually looked at as a positive. And people have remarked about this, Tom, whether it's Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins talking about rock and roll. Recently, that's really been hitting YouTube. A lot of people are talking about how the corporate heads don't want the rebels of rock and roll having an audience and being able to hear pro-individualism and messages like that, individuality, that sort of thing. And you have had to work really hard to be able to maintain. So we look at Borderlands Press. We look at what you've done. And where do you stand now, Tom? What are your plans now?
Well, we took several torpedoes in the engine room, okay, but we're still afloat, but we're nowhere near the livelihood enterprise that we used to be.
Yeah,
and it's a problem, and a couple people, some of our editors and a couple of our writers, got together and they put up this crowdfunding page, which I'm not all that crazy about, because I don't want to feel like I'm, a whining mendicant. You know what I mean? It's just that's not who I ever have been.
Yeah.
And I have had a kind of a stoic demeanor about just toughing it out. But the more I hear, the more I see of that progressive evil cancellation culture, I do want to strike back at them. And I mean, a lot of them don't have any money. It's not, look, I'm seeking damages. I'm looking at just an apology and just say that, you fucked me up. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
And let's go back to where we were.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever can do that. I'm just not sure.
So people
And
have started up.
Here's the other thing.
Yeah.
You know, in April, I'm going to be 80 fucking years old. All right. And I don't feel like it. I don't act like it. I might look like it. But you know what? I still have my wits about me. And, you know, I have no idea how long I'll be on the planet. But you know what? I don't want people to think that they can fuck with me, you know?
Well, I appreciate what Nick has done because, Tom, this is a great thing to do thinking about your 80th birthday coming up on a personal level. And as you know, I've been real sick recently, and I've had to find ways. It's sort of a precursor to understanding what aging can do to someone where
my God, it can be a motherfucker.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've been blessed with good genes. You know, I don't even take any prescriptions. Can you believe this shit?
Right.
I mean, I'm blessed. I'm lucky.
Yeah, and you're still going with ideas. Like people used to say,
exactly. Every day, man.
Yeah, I remember my friend
feet hit the floor in the morning. There's a reason I got up.
My friend, Malcolm said he is a plot machine. This guy, and I know what you're talking, what he means on that, because I had a friend who ended up editing American Cinematographer magazine, and when I was
how's Malcolm doing, by the way?
He's doing great.
I loved him at boot camp. He was great.
Absolutely. He's in a band called Able Blood and doing professional work as well. But on the side, he's in a band called Able Blood. And they got an Italian, of all things, record company contract and are supposed to be going on a short European tour. So that's
my God,
that's pretty cool stuff. And of course, there's that great short story.
He was a real spark plug in the boot camp.
People are going to have to read that story, Snare, that he wrote. Snare, I think it was, right? The one about the soldiers.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, by the way,
yes.
I am. You can tell people we're consciously and aggressively reading for the next volume of Borderlands 8. I've got something from you, and here's something else. We're moving forward with the next series of little books. You have been a contributor, okay? The next series is going to be new voices in horror and dark fiction and dark fantasy, and I would love to have a collection of your short fiction as one of the books if you want to do it.
Oh, yes, that would be great. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm putting it out there to the HWA. I said something to Lisa Morton, and I said, we want new writers. You want the new generation of writers. If they have, published less than several books that aren't self-published, and they have a body of short fiction or, nonfiction, we'd like to look at it. We have 15 titles, 15 colors, 15 opportunities to get published in a signed limited edition. And this is your chance to see if your desire to be published in a signed limited edition trumps your hate of Borderlands Press and me.
I love it. And the series, I showed a little bit. I mean, my Russian production team showed a little bit of the Borderlands website. I want to show a little bit more.
Oh my God, your book was brilliant.
Oh, thanks. This is great. I appreciate that so much.
Sold out right away.
Yeah. Oh, it was so much fun. And, it really opened the door to understanding Robert E. Howard a lot better for me. And then, of course,
your introduction clearly revealed that, you know?
Yeah. You know what I would love to do is I want to get the people from the Robert E. Howard Foundation on the show. They're doing some wonderful things, putting out new hardcovers of his work, plus some of his letters between him and HP.
They deserve to be, because, there's a whole generation of readers that have no idea who he was.
Oh, boy. For a long time, Tom, I didn't read Howard's work because I knew, what happened to him and his towards his suicide and that.
Oh, and he was like a kid, really.
Yeah. After literally, it was after he realized his mother wasn't going to survive. He left the medical place out in the parking lot and killed himself because he could.
Incredible.
Yeah,
incredible.
He was so close to his mom. He was so heartbroken, but. His writing really, now that I can separate myself from that tragic ending, I can actually sort of appreciate the vulnerable human being who appreciated history and colorful writing and changed so much. He really was fantastic, Robert E. Howard. He was wonderful.
he was clearly a unique, talent.
Yeah.
And the fact that he killed himself in his 30s is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, Tom, as a guy who's, going towards 80 in April. I have a relative whose birthday is on the 18th, by the way. I'm thinking about what I can do to help you celebrate your birthday. And I also want to sort of suggest it to the audience. Inside that article, which is linked inside my news notes, they have a link to the Give, Send, Go campaign. And that was Nick Saltos, a writer and editor who worked with Borderlands. And I also appreciate the fact that they also mentioned some of the other conservative writers who have been pushed aside but are doing very well. So I want to show some of these other folks. One of these folks, Larry Correa, is a terrific writer. I don't know some of the other folks. Oh my
God, he's wonderful.
Yeah.
He got slammed.
Yep. And now he stands astride the publishing industry as his own controller now. He still does stuff with Bayan, but he's doing his own stuff now because he's made his name so well. And
and God bless him.
Absolutely. So let's just mention, if we can, Tom. I'm going to the Russian team here is going to spread some of our Russian propaganda. So the Give, Send, Go campaign, I'm going to link over that. If they want to go to that, it's called Save Borderlands Press. Save Borderlands Press at Give, Send, Go. If I can suggest some people to...
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
It's only been up for about a week, but, I didn't really want to push it, but I guess I have to.
I think it's a great idea. And if I can convince some people, maybe we can get another $50, $75 heading there tonight and over the course of the next few days, if people will do it. And then we'll bring you back on when the tech we'll test out the tech, like, on a free afternoon or something.
You and I gotta go figure this out. I have my website guy. He can come by and get me straightened out on this.
That sounds great.
I'm just clicking the wrong buttons, man.
No problem. You press the right buttons for me, Tom, so it's cool. I'm going to bring you back. And we're going to look at final comments from people. Remember, everybody, the Give, Send, Go.
Oh, I sent you a short story that you said we can maybe read next time. So take a look at it.
Oh, great. That's in my email?
Yeah.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Well, because it's really funny. I've edited this anthology series called Borderlands for all these years.
Yeah.
And I looked for a particularly strange, weird, off, non-unoriginal, not totally original, cliched story. And I always thought, I'm not sure I could write a Borderlands story. Even though I've bought tons of them.
Right.
And I know what I like, I'm not sure I could actually do it. But the story I sent you maybe is a Borderlands story.
I have a feeling, you're the guy who the wellspring came from you, thanks to God, giving you these talent and the drive to do the work. So, and don't forget, I didn't know you when I picked up the first Borderlands anthology that I bought when I was in Vancouver at the Outer Limits.
No kidding, really?
Yeah, I didn't know you at all. And that was really, really great. And that bookstore, by the way, is still there. And I'll show you sometime. I'll send you a link to the bookstore. It's on Hastings Ave. And I used to walk up, and it was just a little north of the studios. Yeah, so it was pretty cool. It was a good place. Good people. Tom, I'll recommend, if people can, if I can engender some folks to head on over to the Give, Send, Go. That would be cool. That's my dime store word of the day. And I hope people will do so if we can get some more people to contribute. And let's head on over into the chat. I'm going to show the chat on the screen now, Tom. We've got a lot of people inside chat watching. And after you and I hang up, Tom, I'm going to start reading a little bit more on a hard SF story that I've been writing called Fuel. And
oh my God, excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah. And because I know you are like me. You always know the ending. The ending of this is going to be freaking killer, man. It's going to...
Yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to get there, but I usually have an idea of what I want to happen.
Exactly. And then you reverse engineer it on how to get there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I tell the story to myself as I say, oh, this is how it's going to work.
Yeah. Well, fellow conspirator X Sweets X is in the chat and says, thanks, Tom and Guard. Great show. I dig it. And somebody else was saying, They were talking about like a brandy snifter or something like that. Like next time you're on, have your glass with you or something like that. But hey, remember,
Hey, I got it right here, pal.
there you go. It says he sounds 60. I like that. That's awesome. All right, Tom, I'm going to hit the road, and then I'll talk to you over the weekend.
Thanks forever. You're one of those special people, man.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. You don't know the course of one's life, but I'll never forget the first Nikon I visited. I remember looking forward to meeting you and looking forward to meeting Paul, and then seeing Tracy in a pair of shorts saying, wow, she's really pretty. And then
she was definitely a hot one.
Yep, absolutely. And then meeting some of the other wonderful people, you look at the Laymans, of course. I never got to meet Richard, but Kelly and Ann, wonderful people.
Oh, yeah, they're great. Yeah, yep. Kelly is doing one of our little books in this series, by the way.
She's great. And, of course, Pro Liberty, which you can't go wrong. So
that's right.
That's good stuff. All right, Tom, listen, we'll touch base maybe next week. We'll try to bring in maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks, and we'll do this story.
I'll read a story. I'm a ham.
Well, Easter's coming up, so we'll eat it up. That'll be for sure, man. Tom, we'll say fare thee well.
Have a good night, brother.
You got it, bro. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks. And by the way, thanks for talking on the phone, man. That was great. Tom, what a guy. Borderlands Press right there. So contact him, everybody, and please consider helping Borderlands Press. Maybe we can get another $50, $100 tonight. Some people head on over to Borderlands Press and get some books. Remember, Wayward Pines. They've got a really cool special edition of the Wayward Pines books that I think you might find interesting. These are pretty awesome things. Remember that TV series that was around for a little while? It was a takeoff, actually, of the television series Twin Peaks. And Blake Crouch, who's a novelist and so on, said, I miss Twin Peaks. I'd like to do a show that's sort of set in a similar locale with a mysterious thing. So it was called Wayward Pines. And there's Wayward and Pines. And Tom has issued special editions of those. You can get some really cool books at Borderlands Press. So check it out, everybody. I think you'll like it. Good stuff. All right. Now, before we go, I would like to read to you. Let's do this. I got a short story by Hugh B. Cave that I'd like to read for you. And this one is in one of those anthologies that Barnes & Noble released many years ago. I think Marty Greenberg was one of them. Yep, here you go. Martin H. Greenberg, 100 Sneaky Little Sleuth Stories. So we've read from this before. And Hugh B. Cave has been around for quite a while. I think I've got this in the right spot here. Let me just double check here. Yeah. All right. So we're going to go with this. This is going to be a short story reading for you of a story called Footprints in Purdue, P-E-R-D-U, by Hugh B. Cave. And, of course, Tom would be familiar with Hugh's work. These are the facts. Let me reduce myself here. There we go. I'll leave up the Borderlands Press stuff for you, okay? And that'll leave things running pretty well. These are the facts. I was in Haiti at the time, writing a book about that West Indian land of voodoo and mystery. Boston Police Detective Molly Cook, whom I knew, was there visiting her lifelong friend, Sister Edna, a Boston nun who worked at a hospital in Port-au-Prince. Both women were in their early 30s. Sister Edna had heard about a child werewolf in a remote Massif du Nord village called Purdue. Detective Molly Cook went with her to investigate and, if necessary, help bring the child back. This is what happened, as Molly Cook told it to me. They arrived in Purdue on horseback. There were no driving roads in those northern mountains, and I found it to be a typical mountain village. On each side of the trail stood a row of wattle and daub chalets with roofs of thatch. Sister Edna had been told to call on the village big man, a Monsieur Bravach. He is fat and ugly, her informant had warned, but will put up for pay and perhaps help you find the child you seek. Everyone else will be afraid of you because you will be strangers and because many babies have disappeared there. But he will put up for you if you pay. That house near the end, that must be the one we want, said Sister Edna as they rode into the village. It's the only one with a metal roof. Monsieur Bravach was indeed fat and ugly, and yes, he would put them up for a fee. How else could he help them, perhaps? There is a little girl, Sister Edna explained, who is said to be a werewolf. The fat man heaved a loud sigh. Ah, yes, I know. Meaning you don't believe in werewolves? Asked Detective Molly, who in many visits to Haiti had learned that native Creole language well enough to understand it and to be understanding the nuances. I, certainly not. But though Marie Roche is, of course, not a loup-garou, I fear you would be wasting your time if you tried to help her. Wasting our time? Why? She is mad. That is why the people here believe she is a werewolf, because of her behavior. And because of the babies who have disappeared? Molly suggested. The fat man started. You know about that? Tell us about it, if you will. Well, it was a long hesitation that followed. Babies have been disappearing, yes. 4 of them now. A most unnatural thing, of course. And the people believe Marie Roche is responsible? Said Sister Edna, a frown rearranging her face. Werewolves eating babies? Normally, they would not, of course. I mean to say, the fat man quickly amended, I do not believe in the werewolves, as I have already told you, but those people who believe in them will tell you they prey normally on animals, on the goats and the pigs. But you see, you have no such animals here in Purdue. My people are truly backward. They must raise food of some kind, Detective Molly said with a frown. No pigs, no goats. It certainly can't be brought in. Oh, they grow yams. They have a few chickens. And sadly, they grow the smoking weed. Oh, tobacco? Not the tobacco. It has no name that I heard of, nor do I know of any other place in Haiti where it grows. When one is hungry, it quiets the ache in the belly. When one is sick, it eases the pain. But it takes away all ambition. And everywhere, everyone use it. Not for nothing is this place called Purdue. Molly Cook's frown deepened. The people here believe this child, this Marie Roche, seizes and eats babies because her normal food supply, that is the normal food supply of werewolves, doesn't exist here? Correct, said the fat man sadly. You personally don't believe this, however, because you are too intelligent to believe in werewolves. That too is true. Then how do you explain all of these disappearances of infants, monsieur? Bravach turned his hands up in a gesture of helplessness. Among other people as backwards as these, anything is possible. Such as? Let us say an infant dies of neglect, perhaps simply of hunger. The mother is ashamed, knowing she be to blame. She buries the unfortunate creature and explains its absence in saying it is stolen away in the night by Marie Roche. He shrugged. It is so convenient to have a resident loup-garou, no? If the people are so certain she's a werewolf, why haven't they tried to destroy her? The fat man lifted his hands again. They might have, but for me. There was a meeting, and a committee was appointed to go to her house and do it. But I heard about it and removed her to where she is now, and later was able to dissuade them. When was this? About 6 weeks ago. And where is she now? In a poorhouse, back at the bush, looked after by a not very bright old woman, who is paid by me for her trouble. But I would not advise you— Oh, we must see her, Sister Edna insisted. It is why we came here. Very well, he sighed. In the morning I will tell you how to get there. The path is too rough for you to attempt at this late hour. Tell me, Monsieur Bravache, Detective Molly said, has the child no parents? They are afraid of her too, Mademoiselle. It is sad. But now, if you excuse me, I must go to my kitchen. I live alone here, and you can see I do my own cooking. Please make yourself comfortable in my absence. The evening meal was better than they had expected. Meat, Bravache explained again while dining with them, was almost never available in Purdue. However, in a village not too far distant, a few pigs and goats were butchered once a week, and a cousin of his had lived there long enough to be able to bring some to him. Some corned young pork only yesterday. Cut into slivers, the pork had been cooked with red peas and rice and was served with boiled leeks from, Bravache said with pride, his own garden. For dessert, he served avocados from a tree behind his outdoor kitchen. The strong black coffee came from his own bushes. Despite the backwardness of his village, the big man himself was obviously not a hardship case. When the meal ended, he showed Sister Edna and Detective Molly to the room they would share. Purdue was not a nice place, they decided in their whispered conversation before sleep claimed them. Monsieur Bravache was not a man to be entirely trusted either. True, he had no reason to wish them harm and would be well paid for his hospitality, but— I'll be glad to get out of here, Sister Edna murmured. It is creepy. Let's go to sleep, Molly advised. And they did. But long before daylight, Sister Edna woke in need of a bathroom. Their host had shown them the outdoor toilet before bidding them good night. It was at the end of the yard, past the kitchen in which he had prepared their supper. The supper, Sister Edna decided, was probably responsible for how she felt now. Having no intention of making a nocturnal journey alone, she shook her companion awake. Hey, I have to go. Come with me, huh? Of course. Dressed and with flashlights, they went across the swept earth yard toward the outhouse. At the kitchen, Molly stopped. I'll wait here, pal. You take your time. She stood in the doorway of the kitchen shack, aiming the light at her feet so Edna would have a target to return to. Something winked up at her from the black earth. Stooping to see what it was, she picked up an imitation gold heart with an imitation gold chain attached. Merchandise. Sellers sold these in the larger marketplaces for $1 or so, and mostly children wore them. Surprised to find one in Purdue, Molly kept it in her pocket to hand over to the fat man in the morning. When Sister Edna returned from the outhouse, they went back to bed. After a breakfast of coffee and eggs, the fat man told them how to find the house in which the child they sought was living, and they set out on foot. Villagers they met murmured bonjour while looking down at the ground as though ashamed to be seen by strangers. Naked children stared from doorways and seemed ready for instant flight back into the dark interiors of their hovels. It was easily the most depressing village they had ever visited. "What do you suppose that smoking weed is?" Sister Edna said. "A form of marijuana?" Molly reminded her of a book they had once looked at in the library of a school back in the capital. It had described and pictured more than 300 poisonous plants to be found in Haiti. My hunch is it's something more potent than that. I bet something local. Then they reached the house. It stood by itself in the bush at the end of a little-used footpath of wattle and daub, with most of its clay fallen out. It no longer had a door, only an opening, in which hung a ragged blanket of the type used under mule saddles. The old woman who answered their hello by drawing the blanket aside clung for support to a staff of bamboo. They told her who they were and explained that they had come to see the child, hoping to be of help. Stepping aside, she motioned them to enter. "I'm called Madame Cecile." Her voice was surprisingly gentle. "Bless you for coming." The child sat on a chair in the hut's only room, sat as though in a trance. Perhaps 9 years old, not unattractive, she was, however, terribly thin, with large, brown, vacant eyes that gazed unblinkingly into the dark space. Sister Edna examined her. "What do you think?" Detective Molly asked. "I think we ought to ask if there are others here like this. I'll bet it's their smoking weed that does this." "I bet too." Molly turned to the woman. "Ma'am, does this child use this smoking weed?" She shook her head. "Has she ever?" "Yes, but not since she came to me." "Was she like this when she came?" "She was worse. It affects more than others on some." "Ma'am, do you think this child is a loup-garou?" The wrinkled face became taut with fury. "No! She's just a little sick girl. A good girl." "Why is she thought to be a werewolf, then?" "Because Monsieur Bravache says she is. That is all." Startled, Detective Molly looked at the child again, then at Sister Edna. Edna said in a tone of incredulity, "Monsieur Bravache says she is a werewolf?" "Of course, unceasingly." "But he told us." Sister Edna faltered, and Molly picked it up. "I take it you don't like Monsieur Bravache, ma'am." "Does anyone?" "Well, of course, we don't know. We're strangers here. Why don't you like him?" "He is a man who must always have more than the rest of us. More of everything, just to prove he is entitled to it. As for this poor child, he has all but destroyed her by saying she is a loup-garou. Yes, I beg you, take her away and help her." "It would seem," said Sister Edna, scowling, "that your Monsieur Bravache has told us some things that are not true. He said, for instance, that he himself did not believe in werewolves, and he brought Marie here to keep her from being killed." "He did bring her here?" "Yes, he did. And it puzzles me, because he is the one who turned these people against her by saying she is a werewolf." Detective Molly, too, seemed puzzled, but could see no point in pursuing the interrogation any further. The old lady obviously could not provide a solution to their quandary. "Tell me something," she said. "Is it true that babies have disappeared here?" "Yes, mademoiselle. One disappeared only 2 nights ago." "Only 2 nights ago? He didn't tell us that." "Just 2 nights ago, the month-old baby child of young Nita Bourne was stolen from her bed, where there were footprints in the mud around the house in the morning. No one has seen the infant since." "What kind of footprints were they?" "Well, they looked like those of a large dog. I myself saw them, but we have no dogs in Purdue. When you are hungry, it is better to eat dogs than to keep them for pets and have to feed them." Shaking her head, the old woman looked at Marie Roche. "You see how hard it is for me to find food even for her. Please, take her with you." Yes, we will," Sister Edna said. "And here's some money to pay you for looking after her." She was generous, and what the old woman would spend the money on in such a place she could not imagine, but she gave it to her. "I have one more request, ma'am. Can you take us and find us some of this smoking weed you have talked about?" "Oh, no. You must not think of using it." "We don't mean to use it, just to have it analyzed. If we can find out what it is, we may be able to help you. It may speed Marie's recovery also." Wait here," the woman said, and went out. What she brought back a few minutes later was not of the marijuana family, Molly and Sister Edna decided. The leaves were oval, brittle, and as shiny as though freshly enameled. Molly wrapped them in a handkerchief and trusted them to her shirt pocket. "Thank you, ma'am. Now, we say goodbye. Please say goodbye to Marie, and we will leave." The woman and child embraced, and there were tears in the old one's eyes. As Molly and Sister Edna walked their charge back to the fat man's house, there were horses tethered, they saw. And, of course, they discussed what the old lady had told them. 3 things puzzled them. Why had Bravach insisted he did not believe in werewolves when all the time he was telling his villagers the child was one? Why had he saved the child's life after turning the people against her? Why had he not told them a baby had been stolen just 2 nights ago? Well, Molly suggested, he's a peasant in spite of his status here, and we said we didn't believe in werewolves, so probably he thought he'd better go along with us. He's kept our horses. Why didn't he mention the baby? My hunch is that he really thinks a loup-garou did take it, and he didn't want us asking questions that would force him to say so. Should we ask more questions, Molly? Detective Molly thought about it and shook her head. What would be the use? He won't tell us anything he doesn't want to tell us. And then a smile of satisfaction touched her face as she looked down at the child walking beside her and clutching her hand. And we've got Marie. Let's just get out of here. They paid Monsieur Bravach for his food and lodging. They bade him adieu. When their wiry little horses paced out of the yard, Sister Edna led the way, and Detective Molly brought up the rear with the little girl sitting in front of her. She looped her right arm around the child to keep her from sliding off, for little Marie had never sat on a horse before. The house was some distance behind them when Molly suddenly remembered she had something in her shirt pocket that belonged to the village big shot. Fishing it out, she looked at it and decided she did not care enough for the man to go back with it. Disturbed by her sudden shift of position on the horse, little Marie turned her head to see what Molly was doing. And Molly smiled at her. "Here, small one, here is something pretty to hang around your neck." In English, she added, "Call it an unwilling reparation from a man who has done you harm." Delighted, Marie put it on. Molly fastened the clasp for her, and by this time they were nearing the end of the village street. It happened in front of the next to last house, where a sad-faced young woman leaned on a gate in a bamboo fence, watching them as they approached. Sister Edna rode by, murmuring a polite bonjour and lifting a hand in greeting. A picture of total dejection, the woman did not respond. Then she saw the child on Detective Molly's horse, and her gaze went to the little girl's throat. As though jolted by a charge of electricity, she sprang forward with her arms outflung and fingers clawing. Rushing at the horse, she began screaming in a voice that threatened to lift the scalp from Molly's head. "You, Marie Roche, loup-garou, eater of babies! Look at you, even wearing the necklace my baby had on when you stole him 2 nights ago." Her rush carried her headlong into the horse's shoulder and caused it to lunge sideways. Only by a miracle did Molly succeed in holding on to the child while fighting to regain her balance. Molly dug her heels into the animal and urged it forward, but the woman's voice pursued them even then, screaming the same shrill words, "Loup-garou, eat her babies!" and the same furious accusation, "Wearing my own baby's necklace!" On reaching the end of the village, Molly turned for one last stunned look. The woman was still in the road, shouting. Just ahead, Sister Edna had stopped and was waiting. As Molly came up to her, she stared as though hypnotized at the necklace on the child. She had heard the screams of the missing baby's mother, of course, and she knew about the necklace, for Molly had shown it to her in their bedroom after finding it by the fat man's kitchen. Now, as she gazed at it, her eyes filled with horror. "Oh, Lord," she whispered. "Oh, God, Molly. That meant he served." And then she began to cry. "Don't do that." Molly knew she had to speak sharply to make her friend respond. "We have to get back in a hurry and report all of this to the police. I have to bring them back here at once to arrest this, whatever he is. Come on, hurry." Sister Edna stopped crying and nodded. Wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, she urged her horse forward again. But as they began their return journey, Detective Molly Cook wondered how, among other things, she would convincingly report the footprints of a large dog in an isolated mountain village that had no more dogs. And that's the end. Loup-garou indeed. From Hugh B. Cave. Now, I don't know when that was published by Hugh Cave. I'll show you some background information on Hugh Cave, by the way, just so you get some information about Hugh Cave. His stuff's been around. I thought he was more contemporary to me, Hugh Cave, but I found out later he was many years before me. This was published in 1997. Let me just check in the back and see if there were separate publication dates for any of these stories. Yeah, so originally published 1985. And guess who published it? This is crazy. Stuart Schiff, the guy Tom Monteleone nominated for the Bram Stoker. Yeah. He published it in Whispers magazine. Holy smoke, dude. That's wicked, as they would say in Dorchester. Way to go, Stu Schiff. Wow. That is so cool. Again, if you're looking for this book, this is, I got this used. 100 Sneaky Little Sleuth Stories. Okay. So there you go. 100 Sneaky Little Sleuth Stories. All right. There you go. Wow. Cool stuff. I hope you like that. Did you like that story? I thought that was good. I thought that was a really good one. Hugh Cave. Now, let me call up Fantastic Fiction. I'll show you what Hugh Cave's stuff is like. Yeah, Hugh B. Cave. Here we are. Here's Hugh Cave's bio from Fantastic Fiction. 1910 to 2004. Pulp writer Hugh B. Cave began his incredibly prolific writing career in 1925 when he was 15 as a writer of Western tales. Soon after, he moved to detective, horror, and adventure fiction, then finally to general fiction, selling more than 1,300 short stories and novelettes to over 200 magazines. He also wrote 45 books, including short story collections, genre novels, and histories of several Caribbean islands. So that's how he knew Haiti, clearly. Isn't that something? So let me see. Born in 1910, he probably served in World War II in Britain, born in Britain. And, sorry, I just enlarged this. Horror Writers, World Fantasy Award, 1999. Let's see, and got the 1999 World Fantasy Award Lifetime Achievement, 1978 World Fantasy Award for Best Collection, 1996 World Fantasy Award for Best Collection, 1991 Bram Stoker Award for Lifetime Achievement nominee. That is super cool. So there you go, and you can see Best of Cemetery Dance. I've got that. I think that's really expensive now, the Volume 2 one. Mammoth Book of Nightmare Stories. You can check that out. That's probably got some good stuff. Edited by my friend Steve Jones. This one edited by Steve Jones as well. In Footsteps of Dracula. Good stuff. Let's see some of his collections. The Witching Lands. This is great. Look at this one. This one, I actually want to get this. I have this on one of my waiting lists. I'm going to add it over here at Fantastic Fiction too. Yeah, cool stuff. Here's the hardcover of Morgenstrom over at Amazon. Nice, huh? Cool stuff. That's a Lovecraftian story, that one. I know that story. Wow, very cool. That was great. I really enjoyed that. By the way, I wrote some more on Fuel. And did you guys like that? Oh, hey, Jason says, my uncle was a huge reader of his short books. Louis L'Amour. Yeah. We got to do, if I only had more time, I'd love to do readings of Louis L'Amour books each night. Jason says, thanks, Guard. And that's a strange thing, too, because when you do things consistently each night, people can miss those things. So you wonder whether the payoff is worth it or not. But I do think it is. Oh, Taylor Saunders says, Hugh B. Cave was a war correspondent during World War II. Wicked cool, man. That is neat. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Thanks, guys. All right. Well, let me do this for you as we close things off. I'm going to read to you a little bit more for Fuel. And I'm going to go back a little bit. Just a little bit. I'll read you a little bit more about how our main character, Nick, had gone into Johnson's quarters on their ship. They were running low on fuel. And first he tried to get a little bit of sleep, but he'd get up from the co-pilot's chair. They got to find a way in the asteroid belt to try to get some way of, getting the word out that they'll get rescued because they were low on fuel. And so they tried to redirect to get away from some material that was in their path. And this is in the future where everything's sort of run by a giant corporation nation state. And this guy goes to the bridge. There's only two guys aboard the ship, which is basically an old thing called the Helena Howe, and it's been refurbished. So now they only need two guys. And the main character says, I didn't stay on the tracks, that's the railroad tracks to Dreamland, long. I'd slept in the co-pilot's chair before, but it wasn't as comfortable as my bed. So after what might have been 20 minutes of some furious REM cycling, I stirred, decided to officially hit the proverbial sack, and got up. Johnson wasn't in his little cell when I reached it. Likely was finishing his time in the zero-G soaker that we both like to use as a way to get clean while loosening the muscles and bones. And I was prepared to disconnect from all of the immediate worries and to go to sleep when I thought different. Instead, I stepped into his open room and sat in the chair beside his little bunk, thinking, waiting for him to return. Honestly, I can't express why I went in, but when I had been in the chair for a few minutes and started to get bored, I noticed the book he had shown me. He had put it on the afterfoam near his pillow, and the bright red starkly shone against the sheets. The title, I could see when I held it, was not inked in a different color, but was imprinted in the red board, a collection called The Blush of Blish. It was big, and it was heavy. And when I opened it, I could see that it had changed hands more than once, because various readers had circled or checked off stories and what appeared to be novellas and novels in the tome, perhaps indicating their favorites. One of the guys had put his last name beside what must have been his circles, leaving Parker as testimony. Another, using check marks, had been named Barnum O'Neill. Funny, though, because both of them had written tiny additional comments near some of the stories they had chosen, comments that fit the same pattern, saying, for example, add 2, 100.23 times 45, and 1-6-0.05 times 120, which, of course, made no sense at all. That's where we were left off before. And I had no time to make sense out of them because Johnson walked in while my eyes were staring at the numbers. I heard first his bare heels thumping on the floor weave, then looked up to see him enter while he wiped his slick dark hair, with a washclotter. The rest of his slim bod was wet, glistening in the sublights, highlighting his lack of body fat and some long, thin, pale scars on his shoulders and at the base of his collarbone that I'd never noticed. And he wore a white towel wrapped around his waist. "Hey," he said, finishing a bit of drying left for his hair. "What's up?" He tossed the clotter on the seat, and I got up from the bed to bring the open tome into his view. Just looking at the book those guys left. Did you notice this?" I turned it so he could see without angling his head like Anubis hearing an Egyptian prayer in the air, and he set his perceptive gaze on the code. Something that fed on adrenaline stirred in my gut as I watched his look of perplexity graduate to something like suspicion, then blossom into something more like amazement. "Those look like coordinates," he softly offered, as if to himself. "Yeah? Yeah." And he looked up, eyes shifting across planes of thought. Then he settled back on the digits. "They're in this zone. I wonder why they put them in there." He grabbed the book. "Hold on." Then he turned the pages to the stories that had been circled. A flash of new surprise. And he had laid the book on the nightstand. "Johnson, look at this." Following his finger as it tapped the open pages, I was able to discern that one of those guys had put little underline marks beneath various letters. "What's going on here?" I asked. He tapped my shoulder and pointed at a small cubby niche in the blue wall to our right. "Grab those, will you?" A pencil and spiral notepad sat there among the debris, so I got those and handed them to him. He responded like a man possessed, transcribing the letters onto the notepad, his head bobbing back and forth, body slightly angled forward, as if he were a mental case who never took proper RNA. I stood diagonal to him, experiencing an onslaught of nervous, childlike vibes. Not memories precisely, but the kind of mental state I'd felt when participating in treasure hunts. It was the anticipation of a picture puzzle coming together, that feeling of revelation as one ran the curve of a corridor in the forbidden sub-basements of Megropolis 6 to find a secret ladder that might lead through floor after floor of citizen sleepage, all the way to the sky. And then he straightened, spun on his bare heel, held out the paper. It's not even ciphered. They left it simple. Left what? He grabbed a pair of sweatpants from his closet slot and headed for the portal, waving for me to join. The HH crew. If this is real, it looks like it tells us where they went and why. And that's what I've got so far for fuel. So the hell in a how. Kick out the jams, melon farmer. Kick out the farms, melon jammer. The hell in a how. What is happening with the hell in a how? Who knows? It's going to be interesting. And like I said, it's going to end well. It's going to be cool. Breaking the code to buried treasure, says Wally Walrus. Yeah. Wally says the Dark Tower series was pretty good for a sci-fi Western. People really liked that when I was at the bookstores, some of their favorite Stephen King stuff. It's funny because I like Stephen King's short work, and I've tried to read some of his longer stuff, but after a certain point, I haven't really been able to make it through, and I just don't know why. Salem's Lot, when I was a teenager, I got that because of the TV movie with David Soul. That held up. But a lot of the other stuff, I don't know why, but his short stuff, has some pretty good impact, really good stuff. Good style, good stuff. His son, Joe Hill, Joe King. He's a terrific short story writer too. Brandon, thanks. Brandon says, awesome, Guard. Yeah, Brandon, I was going to read the whole thing. I'll do that next week. I'll devote a night to read the whole thing on that. And I'm going to try this weekend, if I can, to finish off the last edits for Tower. I need to get the time to be able to look through it. And so tomorrow I'm hoping, if I can make it, to go to Concord, which is about an hour away, 45 minutes or so, to go for a little bit for the Free State Project's Liberty Forum thing, because I want to talk to Tom Woods and Scott Horton and Richard Grove and those guys. And, Jason Horns is going to be there for a little while. And Carla Garrick's going to be there. Ian's wife, Bonnie's going to be there. I want to see Bonnie. And so I'm hoping to make it. But it's really, really weird. And I know that I've ended the show sometimes just letting you guys know some of this stuff. The way this weird long COVID thing manifests itself is I have now, it was a sudden onset of basically constant, very intense tinnitus. And I always protected my hearing very well. And it also feels like people are pushing pencils down my ear canals, which is weird. Then there's an extreme exhaustion, which gets to the point sometimes, and you saw last week, it gets to the point sometimes where I'm like bent over and I'm like moaning and I can barely lift my arms. Like even now, my arms almost feel sort of slightly disconnected from my body. It's very, very strange. And I was out shoveling snow, and oftentimes I can get adrenaline going, and for a little while I'm okay. But then afterwards, after my body starts to calm down, then I get really, really tired. And this post-exertional fatigue. The mornings are the worst. In the morning, I was already having problems due to either mold exposure or something that, maybe it's an injury to my neck, where if I'm lying down for longer than 6 hours or so, the left side of my nostrils gets super plugged up, and I always run the risk of getting one of these terrible migraines. And as I get the migraine, which was happening before I got the long COVID thing, my body temperature drops. I get super, super tired. The pain is like nothing you can imagine. And the exhaustion is so bad that sometimes, as I've been driving home after lecturing for students, I literally would have to blast music and just punch the dashboard to get through without having to pull over and just basically pass out. Little bits of caffeine, the purple butter burr, that is helpful. And usually I'll take about 100 milligrams of purple butter burr, sometimes 200 milligrams of purple butter burr, plus quercetin. Quercetin is a very, very good natural decongestant. 200 milligrams of that. And then to get rid of the pain, Tylenol. When I would get the headaches, my digestive system would just open up. Everything would come out of me. And a lot of people would say that that's basically, it's a mast cell response. You probably, because I probably got damage to my digestive tract because of the mold exposure, Aspergillus mold. And I wasn't flushing out the toxins properly. They did the urine test. And it's very interesting. You get a lot of suggestions from people who have a lot of expertise in their fields. They've done a lot of research, and I've done a ton of research, and I don't really talk a lot about it. Like a lot of research. And one of the problems is that within the family, it's even with friends, there's an impossible gap. There's a chasm of communication. And I've mentioned this, and people who've experienced this, Karen, you understand it. Other people who've experienced terrible headaches and bad exhaustion like this, chronic fatigue problems, they get it. I didn't get it until I experienced it. Like I operate, and like I said, I train myself, and I know that I operated my life in a completely different level than most people did. And if you knew me before I got sick, you understood, like way beyond, like friendliness, high energy, way beyond normal people. And it was because I was badly made fun of when I was a kid, and I figured out ways to be sociable and friendly to people and kind to people. And I made a science out of it. And so I grew up real fast when I was like 10 or 11 years old. I figured out the games and figured out how to be honest while also trying to protect myself. And so I put a lot of energy in trying to be kind to people and good to people. And when you get hit and you can't give people what you want to give them, that's tough. And when you get into a situation where you're ill and other people haven't experienced that, there's a communications chasm. They can't understand it. And so you go to try to apologize because you can't give them what you expect to give them. And they might look at it as complaining. Literally, I'll be sitting there bending over to try to pick something up, moaning. I was on the phone with Travis one time, getting some of the tech set up for filling in for David. And the pain and ache of just basic movements was just starting. It started in my spine. And I said, "Oh, sorry, Travis." Now, Travis experiences his own things from RA. He understands and has things that I can never understand, right? And it is very, very strange. However, the blessings that come from it, like I said, are very important. So as I said, I'll give you the examples, and I don't want it to just be me, but since it's me on the camera, I'll just express this, and then maybe we can get some people talking about these things where you realize that there's a balance, that God has given you an actual blessing of these things. And you got to understand your expectations need to change now, and God is giving you something that you didn't expect, and it's tough here, but it's okay here. It's good here. It's a blessing here, and you're an example perhaps to help somebody else, maybe, right? So, as I mentioned, when I got ripped off twice in Hollywood, I never brought suit. Philosophically and also tactically, I didn't think it would be wise anyway, because I didn't know whether I'd win or not, but I didn't bring suit. And it was a lot of money, and it would have established my career in LA. But I wouldn't be here. As I said, I would not have been next to my mom holding her hand when she died. I wouldn't have saved the cat 3 times, plus my brother the 4th time. I wouldn't have been here with my niece. I wouldn't have been here with my sister. I wouldn't have been up helping my sister break ice jams on the roof as new storms came in one year. I wouldn't have met David. I wouldn't have met Jason and Karen and Tony and Don and all of you guys. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't have been doing my talk show in New Hampshire. I wouldn't have been writing for MRC TV, doing videos about the Constitution and free market economics. I wouldn't have met so many people. I wouldn't have met Jacob Hornberger or done fill-ins with Ian and Mark of Free Talk Live. Ian now in prison, trying to help Ian. So you see God is there. And so And again, I wouldn't have recognized that the material world comes from, by definition, something that is non-material, that the physical has to, by definition, come from the metaphysical. Now I get it. I wouldn't have met Richard Matheson's son, Richard Christian Matheson, and had conversations about this. I wouldn't know Tom Monteleone and F. Paul Wilson. I wouldn't have had all those other stories done. But the key thing is my soul and the souls of other people. Very important. And David stresses this. Anybody who looks at the physical real world and says that the physical real world can come from the physical real world is fooling himself. And that's one of the big errors that Carl Sagan came close, but he never quite got there. He started to wonder. Douglas Adams started to wonder. That's why I mentioned that song 42 by Coldplay. It's about Douglas Adams. They said you might be a ghost. They said you might be a ghost. You didn't get to heaven, but you made it close. Because he had always been a skeptic. Then he became more of an agnostic. And towards the end of his life, he wondered. And you can see John Cleese has gone sort of the same route. I think John Cleese does believe that there's something after death now. Whether it's Christianity, I don't know. Wally on screen. Wally says, Divine Intervention Guard. He says, I'm like halfway through the tomb, F. Paul Wilson. Yeah, man. And again, Brandon, just to let you know, when you start getting through the tomb, you'll see all those Repairman Jack stories. They are so well interwoven. They're beautiful. Taylor, thanks. He says, you give exceedingly well, Guard, and I always look forward to your show and perspective. It feels vacant on days you were not present and sharing your perspectives and knowledge. Thanks. Good stuff. Thanks, man. Good stuff. Well, I hope to be getting better. There are some ways that I hope to expand, but, this all hinged off my thoughts about trying to get to Concord tomorrow. And, I could wake up with one of those headaches. I don't know. And then do I try to make it? Do I not try to make it? It's really weird. It's a strange situation. And I've tried to take things very slowly. With the books and the publishing, but I do have to do that fundraiser, I think, to get the publishing company going. And I think that's important. Now, I'll remind folks, if you do have the opportunity, check out the Borderlands Press fundraiser. And I'll post the link again. It's inside my news notes, but I'll post it also for people, and I'll post it on Twitter/X. It's at Give, Send, Go. Just look up Save Borderlands Press. Save Borderlands Press. Borderlands, all one word, of course. So there's that. And so I will say fare thee well. And I might edit some of this stuff out from the former Star Trek Writing Fellow stuff. We'll see. I'm not sure about that. And I also want to mention over at my news notes, I sort of did cursory coverage of a few things. So if you're one of the paid subscribers over there, you'll see the deeper information. I will give you a little bit on this, though, just to let you know. If you go into the news notes and you start scrolling down, you'll see we covered the war stuff. We covered the hit on another elementary school. Covered what Larry Johnson is noting, that it looks like they're signaling possible troops on the ground. Trump, of course, wants to get those weapons from Ukraine. This is actually a good recap, right? Foreign Minister for Iran, Abbas Araghchi, said we're prepared for that. Ukraine, of course, Hungary seized millions of gold and cash from Ukraine. Trump wants those weapons to come from Ukraine. Then the economy. Price of gas, price of oil going way up. Terrible, terrible. I didn't mention this. Maersk shippers, they're suspending 2 shipping services, 2 entire lines, everybody, due to the Middle East crisis. Again, it's lockdown 2.0, 3.0, really. Unemployment up in February, 4.4%. And some social services went up, but all the rest went down. Hospitality, healthcare, manufacturing, transport, construction, all down. Social assistance up. Finance, for some reason, up. Why? Because they're connected to the Fed. And Kevin Hassett says everything's fine. Maybe Monday I'll play you the Kevin Hassett stuff. Sometimes I have to decide, am I going to play a cut or not play a cut? I'd love to play Kevin Hassett because he's such a prime target, and he's such a great lesson provider in deceptiveness and deviousness. But on the tariff thing, I do want to mention again, The Trump administration is showing you how deceptive they are. They're claiming, oh, well, it's going to take time. As the folks at the Cato Institute have already pointed out, Scott Lincecum already pointed out that they have numerous ways, that the Customs and Borders Protection people already have well-established ways for the government to return tariff money. It's a refund system. So as we have there, post-summary correction for unliquidated entries, importers can file PSC. For protests, for liquidated entries, they can file a protest. They can ask for a duty drawback program to be instituted for them, refunding 99% of the duties. And of course, as I mentioned, these processes are not hypothetical. CBP routinely processes refunds for overpayments, but they're not doing it now. Interesting, isn't it? And I also have a few things on the immigration front with courtroom stuff. What I'll do is I'll edit this and do the outer limits ending to say, hey, fare thee well, everybody. And I'll put that out as the former Star Trek writing fellow thing so that the political stuff isn't necessarily in here. But again, there are a number of things here. Judge Newman in Maine ordered the release of a man who was arrested by immigration authorities after placing an emergency call to help someone who was attempting suicide, and they arrested him. Then we've got the Politico's Kyle Cheney writes, federal judges have spent months ordering ICE to give detainees a chance for release in bond hearings. Now, many of these judges are worried that the bond hearings themselves, conducted by executive branch immigration judges, are actually turning into a farce. And ICE detained a Cuban man with a pending green card status for 7 months. And, oh, by the way, one man died recently while in ICE custody. I think I might still have that tab open. Let me see if I can find that. Right. Yeah. Haitian immigrant dies in ICE custody. Family blames lack of medical care. I think that brings the total up to over 20 in a year. Just amazing. It's almost like it's a different world, and yet it's not. So I'll keep doing what I can do, and thank you all for hanging out. I will leave you with this, and don't forget, if you want to support the show, you can do it by becoming a paid subscriber at my Substack, and you'll get the news notes every Monday through Friday, and hopefully it's been helpful. And by the way, also, this item here, I picked up one of these, the Pulsettos. It's a pretty wild thing, and it does make my body go into like convulsions around my neck. And there's the man who passed away. So let's just focus on that man for a second. Yeah. I want to just check to see here. Let's see. His name was, what's his name? I want to see what his name was.
A 56-year-old man originally from Haiti named Emmanuel Damas. He had been detained at a private for-profit ICE lockup in Florence, Arizona.
I have so many questions.
His brother spoke to Scripps News Group Arizona and said Damas had been suffering for weeks from an infected tooth. The brother says medical staff gave Damas just ibuprofen rather than sending him to a dentist. Days later, he was rushed to the hospital, and the family says his condition deteriorated. His infection.
All right, we'll stop there because to go into an ad. Boy, I feel so bad for those folks. But you don't need me to be, it's not maudlin because it's appropriate, obviously. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you all for being stalwart defenders. Thanks to Tom Monteleone for hanging out. Don't forget the Hugh B. Cave page on Fantastic Fiction. Great stuff. And, of course, Tom Monteleone's page on Fantastic Fiction. And, better yet, the fundraiser for Borderlands Press, which would be great. And there's a good guy. He rocks. So I'll leave you tonight, everybody. Thank you for hanging out. I will try to get an opportunity to work on Fuel a little bit more over the weekend and to work on Tower over the weekend. And I'll try to make it up to, you know what, my friends, to the Liberty Forum in Concord, New Hampshire. And maybe I'll bring my phone with me or a camera and see if I can chat with some folks if I can. I'm probably can't stay long, just the way the old bot is going. But then we'll get that fundraiser going, and I'm looking forward to that. That is going to be great. I'll leave you with our outro from The Outer Limits. It's a very short outro. But again, if you go to former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel, you'll be able to get the stories and more about great writers, interviews, more a-coming. Looking forward to those things. And I'll leave you with this from my grandparents, I guess, The Outer Limits original show. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. God bless. Take care.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to The Outer Limits.